we are going to see some of the crops that we've traditionally raised in the state of Washington disappear.
Welcome to the Voter Interest Project's candidate interviews for 2024. I'm Alan McPheeters, the Executive Director of the Voter Interests Project. In 2024, voters in the 10th Legislative District will elect a state senator and 2 state representatives. 8 candidates filed to run for these seats during filing week in May. We've invited all of these men and women to make their case in our 2nd annual candidate interview series. We also have extensive coverage of these candidates on our website, voterinterests.com. The following interview is with Ron Muzzall, a Republican of Oak Harbor, the incumbent state senator who is running for re-election to the seat he has held since 2019. We provided a list of potential questions to Senator Muzzall in advance of the interview. Well, good evening. Today is Wednesday, July the 3rd, and we're here with Ron Muzzall, who's running for re-election as the senator for the 10th Legislative District. Senator, welcome to the Voter Interest Project.
Thank you, Alan.
Where are you today?
I am home in my home office. And of course, our sessions are 60 and 105 days, depending on the year. Even years are 60, odd years are 105, because we set the biennial budget on the 105-day sessions. Otherwise, I have to go back down to Olympia from time to time for committee meetings. I was down there a few weeks ago for the drought committee meeting. I've got to be down there week after next for health and long-term care meeting. So
you saw that coming up on the agenda.
Yeah, so there's some things that I go back down for. But the rest of the time I'm home. Some of it's taken up with Senate duties, but the rest of the time, especially this time of the year, I'm farming, which is my full-time job.
Very good. And you were saying before we started the recording, you're out on the tractor today.
Yeah, well, we finally got our haying weather that we've been looking for the last month. So we are in the process of cutting and raking and preparing to bale hay, which probably will start happening on Friday. So tomorrow's the 4th, so it's full of parades in Oak Harbor and in Arlington.
Right. Oh, you're doing both of those. Wow.
Yeah.
Keep you busy. It's kind of
well, unfortunately, that's an election year. You end up spending more time than you would like campaigning.
I'm sure. Well, let's start with a few quick answer questions just to set the stage for people who don't know you yet. You've been in office for 5 years now, but there are always people.
Yeah, 5 years this fall, so I've been through 5 sessions.
Okay, and just for full disclosure for people watching this, Senator Muzzall was appointed to fill a vacancy in the 10th District Senate seat in 2019, and at that time I was the chairman of the Island County Republican Party. The 3 counties involved, Island, Skagit, and Snohomish, collaborated on putting forward 3 names for the various county commissioners and executives to put forward, and Senator Muzzall was selected at that time, which I think has worked out pretty well. But we're going to try to be nonpartisan here, so I'm not going to play favorites with you or anything. So let's just start with some of these questions. So you're married?
Yeah, married 39 years to the nicest gal I ever met. We have 3 daughters, and here in another 6 weeks, we will have 6 granddaughters.
Wow.
So 4 of the granddaughters, because their mothers are involved in the business, live on the farm. The other one, the other daughter and her husband live down Freeland. So they're all close. We get to spend time with them all.
So you have daughters and granddaughters. No sons or grandsons.
No, it's 10 to 1 at my house.
Oh, you were a brave man. Now, one of the things that I remember from that appointment process was that your family has lived here on Whidbey for 100 and some odd years. Is that right?
Yeah, my great grandparents and grandparents came here in 1910.
Very good. So you didn't have to come here. You were here already. Did you
Yeah,
serve in, did you serve in the military at all?
no, I thought about it a little bit, but went to college instead and got my bachelor's degree at Washington State University. I was the third generation to get a degree from Wazoo. Got an ag degree and came back to the farm.
Okay, so your professional background is in agriculture, which I'm sure serves you well on the ag committee. Uh,
Yeah, but
what
the one thing led to another there, and then that started in with all of the other things. I mean, I really didn't have an intention of getting involved in other things, but one thing led to another, and the next thing I know, I'm where I'm at now.
Okay. What are those, what other things that you've done? Uh,
So I was involved in North Whitby Fire and Rescue for 20 years as a firefighter, as an officer, and 11 years as a commissioner.
mhm.
I was involved with our church. Have been from youth, same church. And then I was Shelley and I were selected. My wife Shelley and I were selected to be the National Council Farmer Cooperatives ambassador couple, which kind of started off some time in Washington D.C. That was a full year commitment. And then I was elected to the Skagit Farmer Supply Board, spent 15 years on the Skagit Farmer Supply Board, which is a local co-op, but we do business in about a dozen Western states. And then I was asked to run for the Land O'Lakes corporate board and spent 8 years on the corporate board of Land O'Lakes in Arden Hills, Minnesota. And that gave me the opportunity. Well, both co-ops gave me the opportunity to travel throughout the United States, but also throughout the world, and to be able to. Land O'Lakes does business in about I think it's 60 countries. So we did a fair amount of traveling there, and then besides running the business here at home and the like. And then in 19, then was appointed to this position.
Very good. So you were appointed in 19. You ran and retained your seat in 2020. This is your second reelection campaign.
Well, actually, it would be the first reelection because
First
the
reelection.
appointment is just the appointment's an appointment, and the election in 20. And so this will be my first reelection after 5 sessions. Yeah.
So what have you learned about being a senator over the last 5 years since the voters weighed in on you last?
Well, it turned out that board involvement, board experience, uh, collaboration that I learned through board experience. It turned out that uh, did me very well in Olympia. I had certainly spent more time in Washington D.C. and in the county courthouse than I'd ever spent in Olympia. Actually, there. But the learnings from working in these other areas, um, it it benefited me well there. So what have I learned in Olympia? I've learned what my talents are, and I've learned what my talents are not. I've learned that, like most organizations, there's room for improvement.
Mhm.
Um, in Washington state government, there's a lot of room for improvement, and unfortunately, um, there are there the organization in Olympia is lacking accountability um, badly.
So I, I don't know if other people think about it this way. I always think about in Congress, so I understand the federal Congress better than the state legislature,
Right.
that it's a whole series of ways that the Congress has oversight over the federal government. And I'm not sure that it plays out the same way in Olympia. So are there oversight committees, or you're on the ag committee? Do you have oversight over a department, or how does that work?
So, Ag Committee, we have oversight over Department of Agriculture, Department of Natural Resources, Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Washington State Parks.
Okay.
So we have oversight there in policy, but see, that's a policy committee. When it comes to budget, the dollars, then I'm also on Ways and Means, which I guess go back. So I'm ranking on health and long-term care. I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, and I'm on the Rules Committee, and then I'm deputy chair of the caucus. So when it comes to the dollars and cents, that's Ways and Means. Right. And but the majority largely sets the budget, but over the last couple of sessions, the majority has included the minority into the budget making process more than what had existed previously. So oversight when it comes to the policy, but when it comes to like these departments, most all of these departments, there are some that are elected, like Commissioner of Public Lands, that's an elected position. But many of these agencies, departments, the leads are appointed by the governor.
Right.
And so he sets a budget. That budget has to be approved by the legislature, but the direct oversight, that is largely, unless it's an elected one, so you got Office of the Insurance Commissioner, Superintendent of Public Instruction, the Commissioner of Public Lands, those are elected, but almost all the rest of the departments, they're appointed by the governor, and that oversight comes from him.
Well, that's kind of a conflict of interest since there is.
Well, you've still got the state auditor, which oversees the financials, and they do audits. The problem there is that the attorney general, the auditor doesn't prosecute. They just present their findings. So then one would expect the attorney general then to act on those findings and do something, but often that is not the case.
That's unfortunate. I imagine
it is unfortunate, but that's part of the accountability issues that we're seeing.
Yeah, I imagine it would be more difficult for the state legislature to exercise oversight because you are only in session part-time.
Yeah, we have staff there full-time, and we've got joint legislative JLR, Joint Legislative Review Committee, which does take looks at things and the like. But, short of writing letters to the attorney general or whatever the case is, we really rely on that independent oversight, and that has not been occurring. He's had a lot of distractions.
Yes. Well, that would be an interesting topic, but really adjacent to what we're going to talk about today. So,
correct.
One more thing about your service in the Senate. So you've been there a while. What, if you were going to say one thing or two things that you are really proud of having accomplished, what would those be?
Appointment to important committees, because that's done by leadership. They basically assign those by merit. The passage of good bills. I think the last two sessions I've been number 2 in the caucus when it comes to passing bills, and they're not necessarily thought up by me. They're brought to me in more cases than not. But the ability to pass bills as a minority member, to be able to pass, we had 5 bills that made it across the governor's desk this last session, and inherently that's a result of one, choosing good bills, and 2, working through the process so that they are represented by the majority. The majority will vote for them. Most of my bills end up going off the floor almost unanimous, if not unanimous, and it's because they're good bills. And like I say, it's not because I thought them up, but it's because they have good merit. We've gone through the process, gone through the committee process, and we've passed them through all of the committees that they need to go in front of.
Well,
and then on the floor.
Regular readers of the Voter Interest Project website will recall that we tracked all of the bills that were prime sponsored by our legislators in the 10th district, you passed more bills in this past 2 years than either of your seatmates. So that's a testament to your ability to shepherd things through the legislature, which is very valuable. What would you like to accomplish in the next 4 years if you're reelected?
If wishes were horses, beggars would ride. My grandmother, one of my grandmother's favorite sayings. They probably, I would like to see some accountability. We'll continue on with some Medicaid reimbursement legislation, our Medicaid reimbursements in the state of Washington are atrocious. And so we rank, 49th. The only state that's worse than us is Kentucky. So we will continue to shepherd through Medicaid reimbursement bills. I've had a number of environmental bills and provisos, salmon recovery, stream protection, and the like. We've passed a number of bills that have to do with state compacts. So it allows somebody from another state that qualifies, a medical professional typically, come into the state of Washington and then be able to practice immediately without having to go through a whole nother process for the state of Washington. Those are three areas that we've spent quite a bit of time on and had success in passing, largely because I am in the ag and natural resources and health and long-term care arena. So that's a good start.
That's actually, I think, one of the reasons. You probably have better insight than I do, but one of the reasons I think that you were legislatively successful over this past term is that your bills tend to be focused on the committees where you have some expertise, those two in particular. Some people get a lot of bills, but they're kind of scattershot over a lot of different categories, and I think that probably makes it more difficult.
Yes.
One of the things that we're seeing a lot of, the Voter Interest Project tracks all kinds of local agencies, districts, et cetera. And one of the things that has really come forward over the past few months is the difficulty schools are having maintaining their funding. And as you know, some of the listeners will know, the state, Article 9 of the state constitution declares that it's the paramount duty of the state to make ample provision for the education of all children residing within its borders. So the question comes up, why are our schools underfunded? Is the legislature not putting forward the money that it should be for what they've decided is basic education, or are schools spending basic education dollars doing things outside of basic education?
So this is extremely complicated, and I'm not on the education committee, although I'm exposed to a lot of it because I'm on Ways and Means. We're somewhere over $18,000 per student right now as far as state funding to schools, which it's significant. We look at private schools and that kind of stuff. It is, in many cases, we're spending more state dollars than they are. One of the bigger problems has been, ESSER dollars that came into schools, and then they didn't spend those appropriately. They used that on staff, on other things. When those ESSER dollars stopped, they didn't have the dollars to cover that.
Okay, so what are, you said ESSER dollars?
Yes, sir. That was the pandemic. Those were the pandemic dollars that came from the federal government.
Okay.
Which were distributed. And I mean, some districts received a tremendous amount of money depending on their student numbers. Right. So there is that. So I see that as mismanagement, because those were technically grant dollars. Those were just one-time grants. It wasn't going to continue. Two, we've got dropping enrollment in many schools. Seattle and Bellevue are both faced with that, but the truth of the matter is that our smaller schools are seeing the same thing, and that is kindergarten numbers are declining. So this next generation, I guess it's Z. I think we're on Z now, are we not?
Yep.
Anyhow, they aren't having kids. So we will continue to see those kindergarten numbers drop, and the state pays on a per student basis. I mean, so however many students you got in your school district, that's what we pay you for.
Right.
And so that has an impact as well on these declining enrollments. And so they're, the schools are supposed to, through their bonding and their local levies, pay for the infrastructure, the structures themselves. The state pays based on a student basis for the instruction and that. But some of it, I mean, I know of 2 school districts that are in big time trouble. One in Eastern Washington, a large school district, where they did not, they made a mistake in their accounting, and I think they're $11 million shy.
Wow.
One, and it was just purely a mistake. I mean, those kind of mistakes are hard to explain, but it was an error. Another school district on this side of the mountains, they're just broke, and we don't know what's going to transpire there. Honestly, there's all sorts of conjecture, but they are under state watch at this point in time, and I mean, the worst case scenario is the school district would have to disband.
Wow.
But so as a steward of the state dollar, I don't see necessarily that it's the state's responsibility to continue to raise this amount of money, especially when we're seeing the level of mismanagement that there is out there. And I'm seeing some of the smaller school districts spending up to 86% of their budget on wages. So that only leaves 14% for books and maintenance and all the other things that a school district has to do. So that level of wage growth in these districts is not sustainable either.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a reckoning here in the next year or two, and I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but it is that's why we get paid the big bucks to make hard decisions, right?
Well, not that big a box. Not at the state
No,
level.
that's the funny thing. I mean, this is a part-time job. Our forefathers that wrote this Constitution said they wanted part-time legislators. They didn't want full-time legislators that went to Olympia and lived there. They wanted us to be home in our districts, feeling the pain, listening to our constituency, and representing them when we are down there. Not that we aren't doing things the rest of the time of the year, but it's a part-time job.
Should it be?
I believe it should be. There's some push by members of the majority to make it a full-time position, but I'm a farmer. I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather who's running a business, who's involved in the community, who goes to Olympia for this each new year, the second Tuesday of the new year, and represents my district in the state legislature. And then I come home. And I think that's the way it should be. Somebody that's depending on it solely for their income, depending on it full time, is not going to represent the 10th district as well as somebody who's doing it as a part-time job. It is it's a half-time job. And there are, I mean, we're spend a lot of the year full-time and more. But I think it's important to keep that connection to the district.
Yes, I think most people would agree with you.
It's important for me to come home and to explain to people who are frustrated with state government what the problems are. And I've attended conferences in the Western United States with legislators who are full-time, and they have a different view of things, entirely different view of things than those of us who are part-time legislators. And in the West, the majority of us are part-time legislators.
Very good. I want to touch on something else. You were interviewed recently about the difficulties that farms face, largely because of legislation that has been passed in recent years. Can you point out some of the bills that have been a particular problem and what they've done and how you would change them if you could?
Well, the Carbon Commitment Act is the one that comes up the quickest, and it depends on who you talk to, but somewhere in that upper 40 some cents, 46 cents a gallon, that is being charged the Carbon Commitment Act. It was supposed to exclude the natural resource industries, so agriculture, timber, and fisheries largely. And it was given over to the Department of Ecology, and they failed. They didn't know how to do it. It's now been transferred to Department of Licensing. They're still struggling with it. Our co-op, which I was on the board of, they decided to work it out, and they're keeping the 46 cents out, so I'm not paying it here. But other areas of the state who have different fuel purveyors are still paying it.
Wow.
So that was an ouch. That we shouldn't have had to. There's some talk about a reimbursement program, but I don't know if that's going to work or not. Then second thing was the ag overtime, which passed 2 sessions ago. And it was passed by urban legislators that don't understand we have to pay a minimum wage. Doesn't make any difference. But a lot of individuals who harvest crops are paid on a production basis, whether it's by a bin, whether it's by a pound, however the case, that particular product is harvested, they're paid. And some of those good individuals who are here to pick fruit or whatever the case is, they can make $40-$45 an hour.
Wow.
More than they can anywhere else, because they're high production individuals. Well, so historically, ag overtime in Washington State, we didn't pay ag overtime. So those individuals, and a lot of them come from Mexico, Central America, come here to make big dollars in a short amount of time.
Right.
And even those who are not in the harvesting side of things, we used to be in the dairy business, they would come and work, 50, 60 hours a week for a period of time, maybe 8-10 months. And then they would go back home for a couple of months, and they would revolve during the non-busy season. Well, they would make enough money during the period of time they were here that they could take that time off, go back and see family. And in many cases, they were building businesses there. By instituting this ag overtime, or taking away this ag overtime exemption, they've essentially made it impossible for those people to do that, because now the producer is looking at having to pay that higher wage. So they're going to limit them to 40 hours, which doesn't allow them to make the kind of money that they were used to during the production season. And it's a hard argument. I try to simplify it by saying nobody is forcing them to work the hours. They are coming here to make the money pure and simply so that they can go back. And I don't have a problem with it, because quite honestly, there isn't a lineup of people to do that work. And so we are going to see some of the crops that we've traditionally raised in the state of Washington disappear, because we are not going to be able to pay those, and some of them are soft fruit, some of them are hard fruit, and we have already seen a contraction in those industries, and we don't know how far. So now they're going to H2A workers, they're bringing in workers from the Caribbean and elsewhere. That's a clumsy process, but it allows them to bring them in. But we don't have the workers because they don't have the opportunities that they had before.
Interesting. That sounds like quite a challenge. You know what? My little timer is saying that we're at 29 and a half minutes, so we probably should just wrap up here.
Here we go.
So if people want to know more about you or get involved with your campaign, what's the best way for people to reach out?
Well, they can reach out to we have a website, ronmuzzall.com. You can reach out to me at ronmuzzall.com. We've got an internet presence, we've got a social media presence. We are fully staffed and proceeding along and looking to win this election handily. Although in the 10th district, that isn't always the case. We often have close elections, but
I was going to say, when was the last time anybody won anything handily in the 10th district?
oh, I think our commissioner from Oak Harbor won handily last time, but no, it's very in legislative races in this district. They're usually relatively close, but we're a purple district, and that's why.
And one of the few purple districts in Washington.
Two, 26 and 10. That's it.
Oh man, that puts a lot of focus on.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Right. Well, great. We'll get all that information about how to reach you onto out with this video and on our website. Once again, thank you so much for taking part in our interview series. Really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch very soon.
Thank you, Alan. Appreciate it.
You bet. Take care. Thank you for watching our interview with Ron Muzzall, who's running for re-election as the senator for the 10th Legislative District. We invite you to subscribe to our newsletter, available in 4 local editions: Camino Island, North Whidbey, Central Whidbey, and South Whidbey. The newsletter arrives in your mailbox every Monday morning with news and events from your part of Island County. Subscribe to our newsletter at voterinterests.com/subscribe and look for more of these candidate interviews as the election season continues. Thank you.